I am STR Kansas, and I'm witnessing for the Lord. We are now starting at number 34, the youth Daniel, Hannah, Michelle, Azariah. In this school of training were not only to be admitted to the royal place, but it was provided so that they should eat of the meat and drink of the wine which came from the king's table. In all this the king considered that he was not bestowing great honor on them by securing them the best physical and mental development that could be attained. CD 294. Among the viands placed before the king were swine's flesh and other meats that were declared unclean by the law of Moses, and which the Hebrews had expressly forbidden to eat. Here Daniel was brought before a severe test that he should adhere to the teachings of his fathers concerning meats and drinks and offend the king, probably losing not only his position but his life. Should we disregard the commandment of the Lord and retain favor of the king? No. Thus securing great intellectual advantages and the most flattering worldly long prospects. CD 3:1. Daniel did not hesitate. He decided that to stand firmly in his integrity and let the result be what it might be. He proposed in his heart that he would not defile himself with the portion of the king's meat, nor with the wine that he drank. There are many among professed Christians today who would decide that Daniel was too particular and would pronounce him narrow and bigoted. They consider the matter of eating and drinking too little consequence to require such a stand, one involving the probable sacrifice of every earthly advantage. For those who reason thus will find in the day of judgment that they turn from God's express requirements to set up their own opinion as a standard of right and wrong. They will find what seemed to them unimportant was not so regarded of God. This requirement should be sacredly obeyed. Those who accept and obey one of his precepts because it is convenient to do so, while they reject another because its observance would require sacrifice, lowering the standard of right, and by their example lead others to lightly regard the holy law of God. Thus, say the Lord, is to be our rule in all things. CD 33. 303. The character of Daniel is presented to the world as a striking example of what God's grace can make by men fallen by nature and corrupted by sin. The record of his noble, self-denying life is an encouragement to our common humanity. From it we may gather strength to nobly resist temptation and firmly, and in the grace of meekness, stand for the right under the severest trial. Daniel might have found plausible excuse to depart from his strictly temperate habits, but the approbation of God was dearer to him than in the favor of the most powerful earthly potentate, dearer even than life itself. Having by his courteous conduct obtained a favor with Melzar, the officer in charge of the Hebrew youth, Daniel made a request that they may not eat any of the king's meat or drink of his wine. Melzar felt that he should comply with the request. He might incur the displeasure of the king and thus danger his own life, like many at the present day. He thought that abstemious diet would render these youth pale and sickly, in appearance of the deficient in muscle strength, while luxurious food from the king's table would make them ruddy and beautiful, and would impart superior physical activity. CD 311. Daniel requested that the matter be decided by a 10-day trial on the Hebrew youth. During this brief period, permitted to eat simple food, while their companions partook of king's dainties. The request was finally granted, and Daniel felt assured that he had gained his cause. Although but a youth, he had seen the injurious effects of wine and luxurious living upon the physical and mental health. At the end of 10 days, the result was found to be quite the opposite of Melzar's expectations. Not only in the personal appearance, but in physical activity and mental vigor, those had been tempered in their habits exhibited a marked superiority over their companions who indulged appetite. As a result of this trial, Daniel and his associates were permitted to continue their simple diet during the whole course of their training for the duties of the kingdom. God's approval 1. The Lord regarded with approval and firmness and self-denial of these Hebrew youth, and his blessing attended him. He gave them knowledge and skill in all learning and wisdom, and Daniel had understanding in all visions and dreams. At the expiration of 3 years of training, when their ability and acquirements were tested, the king, he found none like Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Therefore, they stood before the king in all manners of wisdom and understanding that the king required of them, he found from 10 times better than the magicians and astrologers that were all in his realm. Here's a lesson for all, but especially the young. A strict compliance with the requirements of God is beneficial to the health of the body and mind. In order to reach the highest standard of moral and intellectual attainments, it is necessary to seek wisdom and strength from God, and to observe strict temperance in all habits of life. The experience of Daniel and his companions, we have an instant of triumph of principle over temptation to indulge the appetite. It shows us that through religious principle, young men may triumph over their lust of the flesh and remain true to God's requirements, even though it cost them a great sacrifice. The Review Herald, January 25th, 1881, CD 321. All right, well, we're going to stop here and get to the next one. Tomorrow is going to be Unready for the Loud Cry, number 35. I'm Misty Arkansas, and I'm out.